Welcome to the Low-Carb USA Podcast, where we seek to inspire you to help us build this community. I'm Doug Reynolds.
And this is Pam Devine.
So, Vasudha Viswanath, welcome to our show.
Hi, Doug. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Vasudha has written a cookbook, which is a low-carb cookbook for vegetarians.
That's
and I've always said that in our community, we don't want to exclude anybody. And so we understand that there are people that have religious, ethical reasons why they choose to be or want to be vegetarian. And we don't want to exclude those people. But we also know that it's sometimes difficult to get all the correct macros in and stuff if you're trying to do a low carb or ketogenic diet and you need to be vegetarian. So I'm really interested to hear about this book and how it hopefully can help the vegetarian people in our community to be able to do this easier. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe start out by just talking about yourself and why you even think that the low carb option is important. And then we can start talking about the book and the recipes itself.
For sure. So I grew up in India, and my family has been vegetarian for generations, as a lot of people in India are, and in certain other parts of the world. And this is typically for cultural and religious reasons. And, as I grew up, I realized that there were other options, but I was pretty happy with my life and didn't really feel the need to eat meat. So I think over time it became kind of an unconscious choice, although initially it was from my upbringing. So I've been vegetarian all my life, and in hindsight, all of my meals revolved around grains. In the past, I guess the ancient cuisines involved they involved whole grains, like in India, barley. But now it's mostly refined grains and flour-based products. And of course, we ate lots of vegetables too, but our meals weren't green, healthy salads like the sort of Western notion of vegetarianism is. So fast forward many years, and this is how I got started with my low carb journey. Started a couple of years ago in a very cliched way. I was trying to lose like 20 pounds of pregnancy weight. And this time the pounds just wouldn't come off. I was 35. And I thought I was doing everything right. I was eating home cooked meals. I was working out. But again, in hindsight, my meals kind of revolved around starch, big bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, maybe a salad the days that I felt guilty, and dinner might be pasta or something else. And then I had my physical, and it revealed that my hemoglobin A1C was in the pre-diabetic range. And it wasn't too scary. It was kind of hovering at the tip, but it was still my wake-up call. And I had always thought of myself as fit and healthy, and I didn't think I could even get a diagnosis like that, no matter what I did, right? So that's when I started to do my research. And my doctor's note, it was just a brief note, with the results of the physical, that said, all right, your hemoglobin A1C is high, minimize your rice and pasta and bread. And for a minute, I scratched my head and said, what am I supposed to eat instead? Because this is how I've eaten my entire life. And so I started to do some research, and that was really my aha moment, because I learned about insulin resistance, the science behind why we put on weight, how hormonal dysregulation really impacts our health, and how what we eat affects our hormones. I learned that the multigrain bread that I was buying wasn't necessarily the best choice. I learned that I didn't need to avoid fat, but I was eating the wrong kinds of fat. And that's when I started to look into eating low carb, and I became, there's just so much great literature out there, and I became pretty convinced of the rationale. And once I become convinced of something, I'm just all in. So I said, all right, I'm going to try this low carb thing. I made this big spreadsheet of ingredients that I wanted to use, and I bought my first pack of cauliflower rice, and there was no looking back. And right before that, I had tried to Google some recipes for vegetarian, low carb ways of eating, and everything that I saw was kind of dull and uninspiring. There's only so much eggs and cheese and avocado I can eat. So my tongue starts to crave flavor and spice that I've grown up with. So I've always been a bit of an experimenter in the kitchen. And so I just decided to create my own recipes. And, fast forward to a few months later, when I found what a transformational impact it had on my health and energy levels, I said, I'm going to write this book. And I felt it was very topical coming at a time like this, when the world is moving in this plant-based direction really fast. And the focus is on highly processed products like fake meat or, refined grains. And I just want to put my hand up and say, eating plant-based doesn't automatically make you healthy. For any diet to be sustainable long-term, you need to get the right nutrients. And I wanted to give foodies like me a chance to eat healthy, but still eat interesting food. And that's why I wrote this cookbook.
Well, that sounds awesome. So maybe let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit then. So talk to me about these different recipes and how it is that you can come up with a low carb option. Because I always look at a vegetarian diet and look at it and think, wow, it must be really difficult to get enough protein in and to keep carbohydrates down low enough, but still have enough to eat. So I don't maybe explain to people how it is that you're able to meet those requirements and still have a really good meal.
For sure. So when I started out with these recipes, I would typically just replace the rice, for example, in the dish. I grew up in South India, where rice is a staple food, and it still makes me go weak in the knees, but I found that riced cauliflower, which today you can just buy in the frozen section of any supermarket, or it's easy enough to make your own, makes a really great substitute for white rice. And I had to experiment with the best way to cook it so that it doesn't taste like cauliflower. So you add a little bit of oil, you cook it on the stovetop until dry, and then it just becomes this bland, neutral carrier for any sauce or flavor that you add to the dish. So I would replace it. For example, if I made fried rice with white rice in the past, I would just replace it with cauliflower rice. Then I got a little bit more ambitious. I would try some Indian dishes. And I found that every time, as long as I added those flavors that I wanted to, it wasn't really about the grains anymore. It was about the flavors. So it became very easy for me to do it. And then the next step was really about making sure that I was getting enough protein, like you said. And I tend to use full-fat dairy in several dishes. I've always eaten dairy growing up. I've also eaten eggs growing up, although I know not everyone does if they're plant-based. So it wasn't too hard. I discovered that Greek yogurt, full-fat Greek yogurt, is a wonderful source of protein. And I would make that really simple swap in several dishes that are yogurt based and just replace regular yogurt with Greek yogurt. And then, you would suddenly have like 19 grams of protein in a single serving of the dish. So that's one way to do it. I would use tofu or edamame in certain dishes that had, a more Asian inspired flavor. That's again a great option. And even just, if I was making an Italian dish, like I have a low carb lasagna in the book, and easy enough to use full fat ricotta and, Parmesan or mozzarella on top. And not only does it look really craveable when you're digging into that, when you're slicing off a square, you're also getting the protein. So using dairy and eggs, I think, is a very, very effective way to get those nutrients. If people want to eat completely plant-based, then it becomes a little bit harder, but I think it's still possible. Just make sure you're still eating, options like tofu and edamame. And I think, using a protein powder and doing a smoothie for one of your meals, a balanced smoothie, it's a perfectly good option to, I usually start my day with one of those. And, I think it gets me to a very comfortable level for the day. And so I think it's possible to do it on a variety of diets, but to your point, I think one needs to be intentional about it if we're not eating meat, because otherwise, even the best sources, many of the best sources of plant protein like lentils or chickpeas or other legumes, they're pretty high in carbs. So you would have to consume a lot of them to get enough protein.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear you talk about dairy here, because that's a new, a lot of vegetarians, and obviously especially vegans, they are not going to allow dairy or eggs. And I feel if you feel like you need to be a vegetarian, but you are open to at least those options, that really does make things a lot easier, because as you mentioned, the more and more strict you get about not having any animal products in your diet or in your recipes, the more and more you're going to have to rely on supplementation of some kind in order to get sufficient nutrients into your diet. So I've heard of people like allowing a little bit of fish products and stuff like that in, but I've never heard of somebody actually adding in dairy. So that's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a cultural thing that's maybe unique to South Asia, Southeast India specifically, let me not generalize, but the Indian subcontinent, where I think through cultural and sort of religious practices over generations, people were uncomfortable eating flesh, but were okay eating other animal products. So dairy actually occupies a pretty significant spot in Indian cuisine. In North India, people use a lot of milk-based products or butter or cheese, a cottage cheese, a type of cottage cheese that is called paneer. And in South India, people tend to be less lactose tolerant, so they evolved to use fermented dairy products like yogurt. So we use a lot of yogurt in different dishes. They can be side dishes, main dishes, and people learn to cook with those options. And I think it was probably a very organic way of refactoring a concentrated source of nutrients into the diet within the framework that these my ancestors chose for themselves. So it is a part of certain diets. It is also a big part of, ancient European diets, right? So, and I think there was some sort of cross-pollination there. But with regards to your point about, people refusing to eat any animal products, it does become more challenging. And I think for everyone, they have to make these choices for themselves. There could be various reasons that they're doing it. But really the biggest thing is to be aware that none of this is a magic solution that will automatically fix your health or the planet or any of that, right? And you need to eat a nutrient-dense diet. And so I feel like there's a lot of different forms of plant-based eating today. Some people are weekday vegetarians or weekday vegans, and some people call themselves flexitarian or pescatarian. So people have found different levers that they're comfortable pulling, and that's fine. But I think just the awareness that first of all, eating a whole foods diet, and second of all, trying to optimize it to get the right level of nutrients that you need. In the past, maybe it wasn't that big a problem because people ate local, seasonal food, minimally processed food, and they didn't need to be aware of how many grams of protein there was in a dish. Today, things are different. You're eating, certain produce year-round that you could never get. In the past, you can, get asparagus in the thick of winter. You can transport meat and other products all over the world. And we also lead largely sedentary lifestyles. So I think just the education component has to increase. And if people realize that they can use options like dairy effectively, then maybe they will.
I just wanted to go back quickly to something you talked about with cauliflower and trying to make it taste less like cauliflower, because just we went to I think I can't remember if it was Thanksgiving or Christmas with Pam's folks, and we took a cauliflower mash dish, or either we took it or we made it there, but Pam put a bunch of stuff in it, and the comment was like sitting at the table, was like, wow, this tastes almost like mashed potato. And unfortunately we don't know what she did, because we've tried to do it again and it still always tastes a little bit like cauliflower.
Or cauliflower mash in my book. So, I'd be glad to say.
So what's the secret to getting it? Because we found it and then lost it again. So what is the secret?
Parmesan.
Parmesan. Okay, that's something she probably could have added that we didn't remember. So that's very interesting. No, that's cool. Okay, so why don't you just tell us now where people, is your book already published? Is it about to get published? How does that work?
It is on pre-order now, so just so people can see, it's called The Vegetarian Reset, and it is going to land on bookshelves on January 17th. You can pre-order it now wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your favorite indie bookstore, and you will get it on the 17th or whenever the store ships it. There's 75 recipes. They're really flavor packed. Every recipe has, a beautiful picture like this. And I have to say, the book does a good job of not looking like a healthy eating book. It just looks like a book for a foodie, and it's very at home on your coffee table. Every recipe has nutritional facts provided. I don't know if people can see this, but I have this little chart at the bottom. Never mind, this is not the best way to do this, but if they go to my website, which is thevegetarianreset.com, you can download a free sample of the book, see if it's for you, and then there's links there to pre-order.
Okay, brilliant. That's I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people in our community, and yeah, thank you for doing it, and thank you for actually reaching out to me and asking if maybe this would be something of interest to our folks, which I think it will be. So thank you very much for doing this.
I hope your community gets something out of this.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I encourage them to go and take a look at your website, see if they can learn some more.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. You've been listening to an episode of the LowCarb USA podcast. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/LowCarbUSA.